Right, okay, so I always check that everything's recording about 5 times because I have this OCD, worry that at some point we'll get half an hour in, I'll look and I'll go, oh, I've not been recording your voice, and I'll be like, oh no.
I was on a podcast once and we got 45 minutes in and she was like, oh no.
Oh no.
We recorded any of it. It was such a bummer. So yeah, it's totally get it. No judgment here.
Okay. Rest assured we're okay. One day it's going to happen, and I'm going to panic. Hello, and welcome back to the Redcast, the show all about exploring the world of entertainment and the many forms it takes. I'm your host, Troy, and welcome to episode 7 of Season 2. As always, this episode was available 2 days early for my Patreon supporters, and if you'd like to join in supporting the podcast and getting the episodes early, then all you have to do is head on over to www.patreon.com/RedArcherLive and pledge as little as £1 to get that early access. Today's episode features video game writer Mary Kenney as we talk all about her getting into the world of writing for games, landing a job at Telltale Games and working on The Walking Dead's final season, followed by the unfortunate collapse of Telltale Games a couple of years ago, and then finding new footing at Insomniac Games, where her writing credits now include her working on the most recent Spider-Man game, Spider-Man Miles Morales. As someone who followed Telltale's The Walking Dead almost from the start and has been a fan of Mary's work for several years now, this was a very cool episode for me and I really hope you all enjoy it. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. Enjoy the episode. And we'll start off with me asking, how are you doing today, Mary? You doing well?
I am doing great. It's a sunny day out. Nothing has gone wrong yet. It's a good day to make some video games.
Oh God, optimism. We love it. We love it.
Late afternoon optimism is the best brand.
It is. It is. Meanwhile, it's 10 o'clock here, and I am strangely awake. I mean, my sleep schedule's already messed up as it is, so I'm not really surprised. But
yeah, I'm not helping you with that. Sorry.
Oh, honestly, I seem to run on 4 hours of sleep sometimes. I don't know how I manage it. I go, oh, I'm going to go to bed at midnight and then end up still on my computer on Discord at 3 in the morning. I'm like, I need to sleep now. It's not good.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I don't know why. I feel like I'm more productive in the evenings. I always have these random ideas. I'm like, I should do this for a video. And it's 1 in the morning. I'm like, right, let's get this stuff written down. And then I end up starting doing it. And I'm like, no, stop, go to sleep.
I'm completely jealous though, because I hit 7 o'clock and I'm like, no more good thoughts, no more good ideas.
I wish I was more like that. I wish everything came earlier in the day. I'd be much happier with that.
It has to I have to start around 8 o'clock. Otherwise we're on a timer at that point. It's you have 12 hours and counting to have good ideas and then no more. No, never again. Great.
That's probably the healthier attitude to have. Let's be fair.
Yeah, I don't. My brain just took over and was like, "All right, you can't manage this emotionally, so we're just gonna cut you off." So, thanks for that imagination. Good.
Oh God. Right. So, the first thing I want to talk about with you in this episode is I want to talk about you getting into the industry. But first off, obviously, as it says on your website, because I did my research. I made sure that I knew all my stuff before we started for this. But it said, obviously, that you began with journalism before you got into game writing. So I wanted to first off explore what got you into journalism and how that progressed into writing for games.
Right. So I became a journalist when I was in college. I knew that I wanted to be a writer. I knew that I loved writing. And I was pretty good at it. Fine, I guess, at it. And But I'm from originally from the Midwestern part of the United States, and a very practical people, and who were not creative writing was not really on the table for me. English was not on the table for me. It was you need to pick something that is very pragmatic. So I picked journalism. And when I graduated, I interned. And I took a fellowship at the New York Times. After which I worked at the Tampa Bay Times. I worked for a small publishing company here in Chicago where I live now. And that's pretty much it. I wanted to be a writer, and so I became a journalist. I specialized in long-form journalism. So it was a lot of getting very close with my profile subjects, spending a lot of time with them, kind of day in the life with them, and then writing about their lives and their struggles and what was going on with them. So that was my first 3 years as a professional, as a professional journalist. And it really, there were a lot of lessons I took from journalism that have translated really well to game writing. One of them is research. Did a lot of research as a journalist, still do a lot of research as a game writer. Another one is writing on deadline. That one's real critical for both. especially writing creatively on deadlines. So like trying to make something that's not just gonna work, but also interesting and thoughtful and poetic whenever possible. Also very critical. And then another just big question that we asked in journalism that I think I've translated over to games pretty well is, why are we telling this story now? Why is this timely? Why does this matter? Why does it need to happen this year versus last year or whenever? That was really big in journalism. And I think it's also very applicable to games as well, is why does this game need to exist, is something that I take into all my projects. So I was a journalist for a few years, and I've said this in interviews before, it's becoming like my mantra, but my job was going really well, and I wasn't happy in it. And I think you know that it's not the right job for you when it's going well and you're still just not enjoying it. You're not enjoying your time there. So I took a step back and really like gave myself permission to think, what would you do if you could do anything, which I hadn't done in college. I grew up with games. I love games, played them since I was like 8 or 9 years old. I adore them. And so I realized I really want to be a game writer. So I applied to graduate school, both in creative writing and in game design, and went to grad school at NYU's game design program, the Game Center. And after a year at the Game Center, I was offered an internship at Telltale Games, and that internship turned into a job. And that is, while I was doing the internship, I worked on Batman: The Enemy Within. And then when I returned to be a grown-up writer, when they hired me full-time, when I was put on a pre-production for The Walking Dead.
Wow, okay. So you settled into that quite quickly when you went on to the game writing then. Wow.
Yeah, so before my internship at Telltale, I had spent a year, I had made my own games before that because I needed them to get into NYU. So I made my own small, just indie games, like Twine games. And then I had worked on, actually the day I started at NYU, I also started on an indie game contract at a company called Sunburned Games, which no longer exists, RIP. But it was a studio in Spain that was making a turn-based game about Vikings, and they wanted a writer on it, so they hired me, someone in New York City at the time, and that was a really fun project too, because it was combining all the things I loved. It was a lot of research into actual Viking culture. It was a lot of creative writing. It was a lot of deadline writing. So I worked on that game for a year as a contract writer before I got the internship at Telltale. So I had a year under my belt when I got there, but then it all happened pretty quick. After that.
It's brilliant. So what kind of work did you do on Batman: Enemy Within then, before you went on to what during that internship?
Yeah, Batman: The Enemy Within was it was a lot more like intern level work. So it was a lot of if you're one of the people that reads all of the lore posts and the character descriptions and the fake newspaper articles were my jam. I wrote those for days. So I'm like, I spent years writing newspapers. I can do this. So a lot of fake Gotham news came from me. Trophies, descriptions, a lot of stuff like that. But it was a really good intro. I say that, but it was a really good intro into everything that goes into games, because I was looking at all of the different, like, how are we getting this text in the game? What are we trying to convey to the player? What world building can we fill in that we don't have, so much for, and like actual scenes of dialogue. So it was a really good experience, especially for my first in-studio experience.
Yeah, I can imagine, because I feel like some people don't appreciate sometimes the effort that goes into the little details like that, because you do have people who don't explore any of that stuff and just go right through. But the time that goes into that is, it's there's a lot of effort.
Yeah, for sure. And I got to do some early like narrative design passes on a few scenes too. So that was just like looking at some dialogue branches as well. And I mean that, other writers came in and gave me a lot of notes and actually wrote it real good. But that was also a good learning experience, right? Because I was seeing the bones of something I had created and designed, and then what needed to happen to make it shippable was a really good experience. So all of that was great. It made, at the end of the internship, when I was deciding whether to return to grad school or to stay at Telltale, that all of the experience I had been getting made it helped me make my decision to stay at Telltale.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That's fair. And then obviously she said, so then when you got the full job, you then transitioned over onto The Walking Dead with the final season. So talk a bit more about the role you played in that then before we go into the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was on pre-production. So that means we're not making the game yet. We're figuring out what game we're making. And for us, what we knew at that point, we were making the final season of The Walking Dead. We had that. We knew it would probably be shorter in scope, but even then we weren't sure if it would be 4 episodes or how many. We didn't really know. And then we knew that it would star Clementine. That's it. That's all we knew. So then it was a bunch of us sitting in a room from August until, I want to say November, like just sitting in a room, throwing sticky notes on the wall, coming up with what are the challenges, what are the themes, what are the settings, what are we interested in. And then there was a change in season leadership the following year. So then we changed all that. That's just very typical in pre-production is a lot of throwing ideas at the wall. So I started out, it was just a bunch of writers, a designer, head creatives, and we were just figuring out what to do and what we were interested in. And that was pre-production. And then eventually I became on the season, to actually answer your question. So the way that Telltale did it, there was a lead season writer, alongside a lead season designer and the creative director of the project. They were kind of the 3 at the top. And then there were lead episode writers who worked with an episode director and the lead narrative designer of the episode, who were kind of the 3 leads on every episode. It was formatted in a lot of the way that television is that you might have a writer of an episode, but they are still working really closely with the showrunner. So that's how we did it at Telltale. So I was the episode lead writer of episode 2, and then I was also a writer on episodes 1, 3, and 4, which makes sense because, I need to know what's happening. So my biggest contributions were, in addition to writing a lot of episode 2, obviously, I wrote not so much in episode 1, but in episodes 2, 3, and 4, I wrote Violet's story arc and a lot of her different branches. I wrote her romance with Clementine. It was immortalized forever on my skin with a tattoo, and then just a bunch of other little scenes here and there. I wrote some Lewis. I wrote some AJ. Just whatever needed to happen next.
I love the tattoo. I almost forgot about it. I remember you tweeting about it now at the time, and then you saw it again. I was like, I recognize that tattoo. And then as soon as you said it, was like, yes, that's where I've seen it. That's amazing. I love it. It's so cool. Yeah. But yeah, that episode was 2 in particular. I thought was fantastic. I feel like because I feel like, I'm going to try not to just not be an hour of fueling your ego or anything. I'll only give the comments when I
bring it on.
Tone it up. Okay, tone it up. It was the best thing I've ever played. It was fantastic, Mary. Nothing beats... No, seriously. No, I mean, I've loved that. I think the final season, we can get to the later stuff and all that stuff shortly, but the final season as a body of work from Telltale, I stand by as being one of their finest hours. Everything about that game, I honestly feel was fantastic. I mean, I don't think they did a bad season with The Walking Dead. I know people weren't as keen on the 3rd season. I liked it. It wasn't my favorite, but I still really enjoyed it for what it had in it. But it felt like, I think what I found most interesting about the 4th one was the mirror images with the 1st season, which they definitely played up a lot. Even the promo art and stuff like that. They knew what they were doing there. Oh, was some of that on you?
Yeah. I mean, maybe, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So for me, the specific, some of the specific callbacks to season 1 were the opening conversation with AJ in episode 2. I really like that conversation. I wrote that conversation, and it specifically called out Clementine's final decision in season 1 and AJ confronting you with that in regard to his own decisions. And I watched some streams of that. That surprised some people. They were like, whoa, hold on, baby. I'm not ready to talk about that.
I think it was mainly because of the foreshadowing. I mean, it was written in such a way that you were like, oh, you wouldn't bring this up without good reason. Why are you bringing this up? I just remember playing it with something thinking, oh, God. It's like, I know what's going to happen at the end of it. Like, it was almost like you could see what was coming at the end of it because of that conversation. It's like, you wouldn't put that in without good reason. You wouldn't have.
Yeah, and I will say 100%, like, Adam Douglas, who's also a writer on season 3, but he wrote that scene that you're referencing in episode 4. He wrote that scene, and I was like, I know you're going to wreck us, and then he did. And he also wrote, like, the very end, the final scene of the final episode, and he gotcha. Like,
oh, God. Honest to God. Yeah. I'm not like the most rigid person ever. Like, I'll cry at games if I'm like a little bit attached to the characters. Like, that, it will get me, you know. That's the way it is. But I remember with the first season in particular, what I thought was so funny about it was I got it when I was like, I don't know how old I was, maybe 14, 15 or something. My mum bought it me. We just saw it in a shop, like the full like boxed first season. And I had no idea what Telltale even was. And I was like, oh, this looks interesting. So it's like choice-based and stuff. So, you know, tugging at my mum's arm, can I have it? Can I have it? She buys it me. I play it across the whole weekend, never having played a game like it. So obviously by the end of it, when Lee dies, I'll put a spoiler warning at the start in case anyone, you know, I mean, they didn't clearly do that, but yeah, so we can go into spoilers. But when he died, I was destroyed. I remember just getting up out of my chair and walking over to mum, and she looked at me and she was just like, what has happened? Why are you crying? I'm like, the game was really sad.
I can say I am with you in that only, I'm trying to remember the third. No, only 2 video games have made me cry. No, only 3 video games have made me cry.
Ooh, go on.
Others have made me come close, well up, get emotional, but only 3 have actually caused the spillage of tears. And Walking Dead season 1 is one of them. So I was like, you know, when I found out I was on Walking Dead season 4, I was like,
yeah.
Cool. Another one is Mass Effect 3, and then the other one is Spider-Man. So that's another one that I finished that game and then had the interview with the lead writer like 2 days later, and I was like, you made me weep.
Oh my God.
It's good.
But no, so I remember the first season made me cry. My mum was dead shocked by it. I was like, no, this was really, really sad. Same thing happened with the second season. I don't think quite as much, but that final section, that was also like mental. That was really, really well done. But like, any game has a habit of doing that. My highlight was, have you played the Life is Strange games?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. My favorite of all time. There is literally a mural of Chloe Price's t-shirt on my wall that is literally bigger than about 3 film posters. It's ridiculous. But
that's awesome. That's very cool.
Oh my God, I love it. I really do. But my highlight of I will just cry at characters I like was the end of Before the Storm, when nothing sad had happened and Chloe had showed that she dyed her hair. I just started crying. I don't know why. I was like, it's like I know what was coming or something. I was like, oh my God, it's the end of this. I don't know. Yeah,
Before the Storm messed with me, and I was like, it's a prequel. I know what's going to happen. And yet, no, I was wrong. Because it's funny, a few people have pointed out like similarities between the final season and the Life is Strange series, but I actually didn't play Life is Strange until after I had finished making a TFS because everybody was saying like, oh, there's so many similarities. They must have been inspired. And I'm like, no, really? But I bet I would like it. If there are similarities, I bet it would be cool.
I never really made any connections like that, and that's my favorite game ever, so I don't know why I've not spotted that. I'll have to look that up, see what people are talking about. But no, I feel like, I might be forgetting something, I don't know, but I feel like out of every game I've played, just that ending section with Clementine thinking she died, I don't think I've cried harder at any game ever. And some of the people who are listening will probably think, because I've had some bad reactions before, like I played a mod of Doki Doki Literature Club that rewrote a lot of stuff, and there was an ending for that I was really upset with. I was upset really recently at Yakuza 0. I cry at a lot of games, okay? Like, I think you're noticing a common thread here. And what was funny was I was still downstairs, I didn't have this set up at this point, so I was in like a longer room that my mum was also in, and she walked past me whilst I was crying my eyes out at Clementine dying, and she stopped and stared at me like she went to go, are you good? But she knew I was playing the season, so she just went, okay, and just walked off. It was like that acceptance that she just knew.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It was, oh God, that ending.
That whole sequence was really beautiful too. Like, it really hats off to all the designers and the animators who worked on it, because I mean, everything, just like playing as AJ, like it was all just really, it was just really good. It was just really, really well done before you got your reveal that like gonna be okay, guys.
Oh my god, I love watching the reactions to that on YouTube. Like, I think it was Burleezy's one was the funniest one for me, where he just kind of went, oh, like just in silence for like 20 seconds because it was such a well done 180. Like, you didn't see it coming at all. You know, people were sat there going, chop the leg off, but I think by the end of it, it became quite obvious where it was like, they're not going to chop the leg off. They're not. But no, that was... God, that episode. I swear down.
Gotcha.
we could dive into that a lot, but let's contain it before I start crying again. But no, episode 2. The point I was going to make that I think I ended up going really roundabout with, I'm not sure where I was going, but I think the thing I liked, this is going to be a bit more of an ego boost, so, you know, you can get excited. But I really liked the writing between Clem and Vi in that bell tower scene. Just because one thing I feel like with a lot of the choice-based games is I don't think relationships are done as well as they potentially could be. You know, like the first Life is Strange game, I mean, you don't even get the characters to kiss unless you're about to kill one of them off, which is like... I'm hoping in the new Life is Strange they might explore stuff a bit more. It seems like they will, but like with The Walking Dead season 2, like with the final season, in that episode, it's like early on in the season as well. It's not right at the end, and they, you know, afford a really large amount of time to developing it. And I thought it was so well done. Like the writing from yourself and just everything that was a part of it really stood out to me as like, you know, there's some real clear improvements here in the way some things have been done, and it was brilliant. Not to mention how Twitter reacted afterwards, like. The community that built up afterwards was amazing.
I've definitely gotten more like interaction with the community about like Clementine and Violet than anything else I've made. I mean, it's just anything else I've made anywhere.
Yeah.
And I love it. Like, you know, I still get fan art from people. I still get questions from people. Some of the questions I get are just so delightful and great. They're like, you know, if Clementine and Violet were going to get a pet, what would their pet be? Which one of them is the little spoon when they're sleeping? Like, you know, really important, like very important questions like that, which I love to get. Of course, there's an answer. Yeah. So the Clementine and Violet romance, I pitched that very early in pre-production, and the reason was, the big question was, what is the season about, right? Like that's how you get your theme, and for us. Season 4, knowing that it was the final season, was about Clementine. Where did we find Clementine? We found her in a treehouse. This is her getting back to, she's having a house and a home and a family, the things that she has not had since before we met her even. So it was about Clementine like kind of rebuilding and then defending this home. And while doing so, trying to be a parent to AJ. And then another big theme that we were playing with was, what is it like to raise a child now in the apocalypse versus protecting a child when the apocalypse began? Like that was one of the other big things that we wanted to play with in this season. So those worked really well together because it kind of got us this like Lost Boys feeling at Erickson's boarding school, because, you know, the teenagers there they're not like the adult communities that we see in the comics or the TV show, where a lot of them are trying to kind of like rebuild what is the society we had before. These are people who have grown up with the apocalypse. So their perspective of how they would rebuild isn't even rebuilding, it's building. It's just building from nothing and creating our own society. And I pitched pretty early that I thought, you know, if Clementine is building Clementine is a teenager. So first of all, this is about the time where she would be starting to think about, like, who does she want to be her romantic partner? Who is she attracted to? And I thought it was really important that it wasn't just we throw a cute boy at her and we're done. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Like that we have a little more nuance and thought to it. So even both Lewis and Violet have some thematic tie-ins as well as you know, Clementine not being straight, but also, you know, Violet is a survivor and Lewis is someone who is not as good at surviving but is good at remembering what it's like to be human, whereas Violet needs her humanity like teased out a little bit more. So even that is kind of a judgment call.
Yeah.
Like, who do I want to spend the apocalypse with and who am I? And that's why, you know, some people have also noted that the Lewis romance scene and the Violet romance scene are written very different. Like Clementine is written differently in both of them. That's on purpose, because a Clementine who chooses to be with Lewis is a different character than a Clementine who chooses to be So, yeah, all of that was on purpose, and it really is tying into what does it mean to build a home? What does it mean to build a family? And I think it is powerful, and I love the closing shot of episode 2. I think shows that, where you see Clementine and then either Lewis or Violet, AJ and 10, and they're all just standing together. I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the future. This is the apocalypse family, and that was the goal. So it was definitely the bell tower scene between Violet and Clementine was my baby. That was, I wrote many drafts of it. I got a lot of good feedback from people in the studio. And it was, it was both, it was teenage girls being able to talk to each other in a really open way. And then I didn't want to fall into some of the traps and tropes that I had seen either in media about queer people, and I didn't want to fall into traps and tropes of romance in games either. I didn't want it to come at the end because, and none of us did. We wanted it to come early enough that they could have a relationship. Yeah. One of the things that you had noted was like, throwing in it at the end of the season. Didn't want to do that because, first of all, the romance was not like the story of the season, right? So it didn't make sense for it to come at the end of the season as like a climax, because the real story of the season is between Clementine and AJ. So like they should be the climax of the season. They are the ones driving it. But the romance is still important to this bigger story of Clementine building a family. So that means we can bring the romance in earlier, and then that relationship can pull and push on her relationship with AJ. And I think that turned out really well, because as you're building this relationship with Violet or Lewis, AJ is building this friendship with 10, which comes to a head in episode 4.
Yes, yes, it does. Oh boy, some of the events in that last episode, honest to God, were Jesus. it was interesting. It was very interesting.
A lot happened.
a lot did happen. It really did. Like, it really did ramp up towards it. Yeah, these are the final. This is the consequences of everything you've done. It was like, oh God. I just couldn't believe how the finality of it, that it actually did boil down to one of these two people is going to die. You made a choice. Now see the consequence. It was like, I had the feeling. Yeah. I'm glad I predicted with AJ being like, you have to trust me to make the right call. I'm like, I shouldn't, but I feel like if I don't trust him, something's going to happen that I'm not going to be happy with. And I mean, to be fair, no matter which way that goes, you're kind of not happy with certain elements of it.
I mean, it's still a Telltale game. You will never be perfectly happy.
It's true.
Absolutely not. That one was rough, for sure. And I felt like, Minnie was one of the big surprises of the season 2, because she wasn't in like early pitches. We knew that we pitched like 10 sisters and that they'd been taken and everything. But she doesn't show up till episode 3. So we really hadn't, written a ton of her. So I wrote her in episode 3. Which was fun because I had been writing all of this like romance and friendships and all this stuff. So finally getting to write someone who was mean was awesome. And so she ended up being so cool and interesting in episode 3 that it just made sense for her to kind of be ramped into like almost our villain in episode 4. Because she really is pushing you on this question of like family and building a family and reclaiming your family. And all of that kind of came to a head in a fairly dramatic manner. So.
It did. That bridge scene was fantastic. It was almost like an unexpected yet perfectly executed villain, because you're kind of thinking, oh, I'm not seeing her again, and he shows me like, really? And then you see the scene, you're like, oh no, this is perfect. Yeah. Because you don't see it coming, and you're kind of like thinking, because I feel like the final season doesn't really have an overarching villain in the same way that other seasons do. Like obviously Lily plays quite a big part in the early episodes, and then she's written off a little bit at the start of the 4th episode, so it's kind of like, is it just going to deal with that? No, Minnie comes in, but it works really well. I think it balances the kind of the antagonists quite well in that season. I feel like it does that quite well. But yeah, I honestly wish that, like, when we mentioned earlier about the Twitter communities, I wish I'd been part of that sooner, because I only really became a part of it towards the end of everything. So, like, obviously by that point now, things have started to fade away. And I know there are some people who still keep their Walking Dead profile pictures and stuff, which is cool, and keep in touch with a few of them. But it was such a cool community to be a part of. And I I will always love and I always take credit because I occasionally see it pop up on my notifications, was when I tweeted at you, one of the first interactions I had, saying, you know, I can't remember, someone said something about wanting to see more with Clementine and Violet, like a bit more of a fan fiction, and I just tagged you and I was like, have you got anything for us? And you replied with like 2 pages of stuff, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. And I love about it because occasionally it pops back up, and you just know it's like someone liked to tweet you a mention, and I was like, which is like, I love that it occasionally comes back into my feed.
Yeah, I still get tagged in it sometimes, and I'm like, I think it was, it was really fun. It's so funny because I saw that request. And then I wrote it, and I was like, I mean, I had this scene in my head. It just never made it in the game, so...
Oh, it's lovely. It's a brilliant scene, but yeah. I just hope we'll see more, because, you know, I remember, you know, people thought there'd be, you know, more with those characters. I mean, it's hard to say. I know they've said now Clementine's going to get her own comic, which is cool.
Yeah.
That was a reason.
At this point, I'm kind of in the same boat as everybody. Yeah. I don't really know because I haven't been affiliated with Telltale or Skybound in a couple of years, so I don't know either. But I would love to see them again in any form. If Violet shows back up, I'm gonna buy all of it. I mean, obviously. So
yeah, I hope we see more. I really do. I mean, if we don't, though, I feel like I would be happy because even though I love those characters, I feel like it did have a very satisfying end. You know, I think it tied everything up quite nicely and tied up all the kind of loose ends within a bow, and I thought, you know, it was a nice way of doing it. I feel like if they went back, I'd almost rather want to see a prequel now, because I feel like you've got a like as perfect an ending as you can have in a zombie apocalypse, so you almost don't want to uproot that again now. It's kind of like with Kenny. I always had it a little bit out for Telltale because I think they did him so dirty at the start of season 3, which I know why, because it was all, you know, they couldn't really go ahead with all the choice you made because it would have been too divergent. I do understand it, but it was like, you know, obviously it's a game of how do we get rid of these characters so we're not making 5 different paths, and just Kenny getting thrown out the window of a car, I was like, you're joking me after all.
Dude, yeah, Kenny was great. Kenny was a fascinating character. I really loved what season 2, and I'm saying this as someone who's not affiliated at all, I really loved what season 2 did with Kenny as almost an inverse of Lee. I thought it was just really, really brilliantly done. It was very thoughtful. Yeah, it was really well done. It was a good thing to inherit.
So, the next thing I wanted to talk to you about, and obviously this is up to you, and I said this in the topics, but I wanted to explore a little bit about your perspective of what happened with Telltale by breaking down, you know, your experience of that, of how much obviously you're comfortable with talking about, but because that was such a big thing to everyone to see that almost kind of come out of nowhere because no one expected it, and the response it had from everyone, it was heartbreaking. So, you know, what was it like for you on your end when all that came to a head?
Yeah, so I can talk about that quite a bit. So in a way, the writing was on the wall, but the writing had been scrubbed off the wall, and we thought we were safe because I don't know if you remember, but actually a year before the closure, we had a major layoff. We laid off. Yeah. I believe, although don't quote me, I believe it was a third of our staff. And that included one of the writers in the writer's room for Walking Dead, our pre-production. It included her. It included lots of designers, every single department was hit by that. So we lost a lot of people. After that layoff, our CEO and some of the leads of the studio explained, like, what was going on, where things weren't working, funding wasn't coming in, why we needed to make the studio smaller, but it was hopefully kind of an effort to keep the studio open. And so that got us the following, like some of their business decisions, not that one so much, but the following few months got us another year basically in operation. And we thought we were okay. It is a heartbreaking situation. So this is unfortunately quite dramatic. So here we go. But so Telltale closed the Friday before my episode came out. Yeah. My episode came out on Tuesday. The studio closed on Friday. So here's how that day went. It was Friday. It was the end of the week, and we were supposed to we had a big meeting to review the scripts of episode 3. So that was supposed to be most of my day. we went in to the studio, and everybody's meetings disappeared off their calendars, deleted, and we all went weird. And then we all had a mandatory meeting put on our calendars at noon. So from about, depending on when you got into work, between 9 and 10 to noon, we were just sitting there going, what's going on? And most of us thought it was another layoff. So we went to this mandatory meeting. All of the founders of the company were there, and told us, hey, it's over. We're done. We're closing the studio. Gave us some of the details, and then said, you can come in early next week and get all your stuff. So what happened after that was 200 game developers spilled into this small town in Northern California and overtook our favorite restaurants and bars for the next few hours. It was a lot of ordering desserts and pints and commiserating and figuring out our next steps. So for me, it was, the first question was, well, is episode 2 still going to come out? I mean, it's done. We've sent it, to everybody who's going to put it out. So, but are they still going to publish it when there's no Telltale? We didn't know, but the answer was yes. So they published episode 2. Came out on Tuesday. And then one of the weirder things that's happened in my career, there's no other way to describe it, was so the reviews started coming in for episode 2, and a lot of them were like, we love it as an episode, but as a season finale, it's not going to work. And I was like, I mean, no,
that's
it's
kind
not.
Of the point. Yeah, it wasn't never meant to be one.
Yeah, I didn't write it as a season finale because I didn't know I'd be out of a job right before it came out. So that was like, it wasn't even bad. It was just odd. It was just an odd event. So episode 2 came out, and then we didn't know if 3 and 4 was going to get made. 3 was pretty deep in production, and we'd already written the scripts of 4. But there was no Telltale to make it. The Skybound came in and rallied and got some of the main crew together to make the scripts we had written. I wasn't on that team. I wasn't brought back, but a lot of the scripts I wrote were used because I'd already written them. But at that point, I had already taken a bunch of freelancing contracts, and then a few months later accepted the job at Insomniac. But that is the saga of that day. It was about as dramatic as it could get.
Oh my God.
I remember, so part of it, my season lead writer had gotten me to celebrate like a really successful table read or something. He had gotten me a bottle of whiskey, and I kept it in my desk just kind of as a joke, not even that I was going to use it. But that was announced, so I went to get the whiskey on my desk, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have this during this meeting. Like I'm not, oof. And it was a lot. I called my husband, from the lawn of Telltale, and said, hey, so I'm gonna be home like all the time now. So that's cool. It was a lot all at once. I do not wish a studio closure on anybody because they are not fun.
No, I couldn't imagine it. The reaction that it got, and sort of all the outrage of it, and all the sadness and everything. It was just because it was sort of left field. Like even like you said for you, I mean, like thinking that it was all going to be okay, but it was really, really heartbreaking. And I remember because I didn't know whether or not you were on the team at the time, and we'd already had those interactions. I remember when they had all the names on the wall at the end of episode 4. I spent a good minute looking around for your name and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh, she mustn't have been on it. And I was like, oh, okay.
No, my like I said, like some of my scripts were used but I wasn't on the Still Not Bitten team because I'd already written them. I mean, that's not a dig on anybody. It's just writing happens so much earlier than everything else in production, obviously, because they need to. Yeah,
you need to know where you're going to do it. Yeah.
so yeah, that's for sure what happened. I will say, the Telltale community was phenomenal. I mean, I got in the weeks after the closure, I got care packages and messages and fan art and just like all this, it was a really hard time because, something I don't know that we talk about enough in this or any industry is that when you lose your job that abruptly, it's not just losing your job, it's losing your community. Like all of a sudden these people who were my friends, I like most of the people who worked there had moved to California to work at Telltale.
Yeah.
So that was my community. That was the people I worked with. And, my friends who had become some of my really, really closest friends, who I saw every single day, all of a sudden I never saw them. And, all these plans you had just kind of fall apart all of a sudden. So it was a hard time. And getting those messages and care packages and all that good stuff, it really helped. And it really warmed my heart. In a really good way. I like just a phenomenal community who were fans of both The Walking Dead and Telltale. I was felt very, very lucky to be surrounded by all those people.
Yeah. I think it was quite hard to see all the developers as well when they put on Twitter, we'll hire some of you, whoever wants to. I thought that was lovely because that was something I did not see coming, but all the studios were seeing, like Naughty Dog and Dontnod and all of them were seeing every single one. I thought, well, that's a lovely thing to do.
It really was. It was a reminder of what a staple Telltale was for years and years too. That it wasn't going to go quietly into that good night. That it really had changed priorities in games and storytelling in a lot of ways. And it's fascinating because now, a couple years later, those weren't just empty words. A lot of, there were animators who worked at Telltale who just shipped The Last of Us 2 with Naughty Dog. Like that's where they ended up. So I was the lead writer of episode 2 on Walking Dead. Lauren Mee was the lead writer of episode 3. And she and I are both writers at Insomniac. She's the lead writer of upcoming Ratchet and Clank. So, it's true. Like most of the people I worked with at Telltale have landed at other studios that were pretty quick to scoop up Telltale people. So that was really remarkable too. And Telltale was founded because there were people who believed adventure games are not dead. People are going to play them and they're going to love them. And if we tell really compelling stories, then people will pick that up. The games aren't just about achievement. They are also about storytelling and characters and choices and that, that is a viable option. And I feel if I had started my career anywhere else, I don't think I would be as good of a writer because Telltale did focus on narrative design so hard in ways that have really helped me as a AAA writer to always refocus on, okay, this is a AAA game. This is an action game, but it's a game about people. How do we focus back on the people? And that all comes from everything I learned at Telltale. So it really has had an impact on how stories are told in video games, for sure. I mean, you can see that Life is Strange, obviously, it has been impacted by the Telltale model. And a lot of visual novels have been impacted by the Telltale model, for sure.
Oh, I didn't even play Life is Strange at first because I literally was such a hardcore Telltale fan. I was like, you're just ripping off a Telltale game. I'm not playing that. That was genuinely a thought in my head.
Yeah, no, and I think it's cool though that so many games, it's like Telltale was a genre for a long time, and I mean, it still kind of is and that's cool. It's cool what an impact it had, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm glad if it went out on any game. I mean, obviously now they're talking about coming back with some stuff, but for the Telltale that we both know as better was. If it was going to go out on any game, going out in The Walking Dead final season was a good one. Because, I mean, it was so clear. That's what was more ironic about it, was so clear, even from a development standpoint, with the engine and the way everything looked and felt. It was this was the big finale, push thing. This was their big, almost meant to be a new chapter. Sadly, it didn't end up that way, but it was so well done in that, it did feel like a breath of fresh air from previous games. I mean, the second it starts and you see Clementine's hair flapping in the wind, it's okay, this is a different kind of Telltale game.
Yeah, the core team really just the things that the power that they squeezed out of that engine before Telltale was defunct. I mean, it was stunning. I remember the first time I just saw some of the first time I saw the school in the engine, and I was like, what? It's awesome. I want to live there. That sounds great. The first time I saw the bell tower in the engine, I was like, I got all choked
Dream
up.
becoming reality, yeah.
Yeah. Are gonna fall in love there.
Oh, it really was brilliant. Even the QTEs, I know one thing that the game's got a lot of stick for sometimes was, sometimes the biggest action is pressing a button when it tells you to, but then it's here are 3 zombies, you can kill them a little bit more freedom in whatever order, go for it. It just felt like it opened up a bit more. You know, it was still obviously a story-driven game, but there was a bit more kind of like input and stuff in it. I thought that was a really, really nice touch as well. Just the way the whole game was done, I think, was really good. So if it was going to go out with any game, as sad as it is, I'm glad it was that one, because that was a good way to end it off.
Yeah, to salute it. No, and I appreciate Skybound finishing it too, because you know, I mean, they said it when they picked it up, but like, it would have felt so awful to be a fan of The Walking Dead for that long, and then halfway through the final season, that's it. It's over. So, you know, Skybound finishing it out was really important to finally close that story. And, you know, whatever happens next, I don't know, but like to at least close that story on the Telltale series.
Yeah, especially that ended on a strong episode with 2. Again, a little ego boost for you. No, but like, you know, because a lot of people are kind of like, you know, usually in story-based games, like episodes 2 and 3 roughly are usually the ones where it's like there's a bit more exposition. It's not really quite as action-packed and stuff. But 2 had loads of stuff in it. It ended really strongly. I don't think there's an episode in the final season that doesn't have like a good balance of the action and the quiet moments, everything. Like they'd hit the nail on the head perfectly in each episode. So, you know, in a typical season, an older one, like, I don't know, I can't off the top of my head think, but if like season 1, 2, or 3 had ended in episode 2, you might have been a bit like, you know, it was an alright episode. It's, you know, not the best one to finish off on. Whereas season 4, episode 2, you're like, this was a strong episode. Don't want it to end because it's not the finale, but this was a strong episode to finish on. Like, it's just, I'm just glad that the final season managed to end things off in the way that The Walking Dead deserved, because it was such a staple series apart from anything else.
It really was. I mean, so I teach now, and I teach narrative design, and I mean, we still, like, when I'm teaching students, Walking Dead final or the first season still comes up as it still comes up in games history classes that are taught in grad schools. Like, you know, it is a milestone in the industry, and so to inherit that and then to get to finish it was really good and really exciting. Yeah, and I'm just so glad that story could be finished, basically, because I do think it was really strong. I think the season leads had a really good handle on what thematically made the most sense for this character, and for the biggest lift to me that really was like owned by our season leads, and they just really got it, was AJ. Was like, because AJ, you know, had no characterization up till that point because he's a baby in season 2, so you know, he's not doing much. And then season 3, he's not there. So season 4 had to make you love him, and then had to make you fear him, and then had to, you know, like, there was a lot of emotional heft invested in AJ, and our season leads really dialed in on that very early, in the ways that he was similar to season 1 Clementine, and the ways that he would be very different to season 1 Clementine. I think that was also just a really big part of the season's success. And, you know, and I'm glad we got to see the end of that. Cause AJ is a great character. Like, he's good.
Yeah. I think, even from the start, the relationship the two of them had was believable. It was really well done. Cause that was, as you said, AJ had no character really, because he's a baby. So you've got to give him a character that, you know, you've known by that point for what, 3-4 years, something like that. Like, you've known about the character and that you've not known anything about them. So you've got to hit the ground running with that. So you're immediately like, okay, this is a new AJ. I'm cool with it. Let's go with it. Right.
And it was, I believe it was our season leads, Michael Kirkbride and James Windler, who wrote that opening scene between Clementine and AJ. And it just kicked you. It told you what the whole season was going to be about, like, right away.
Yeah.
So it's really brilliantly done. Yeah. Many kudos to them. Like, it was nice.
It was really, really good. Right. So, let's move on a little bit from The Walking Dead, as much as it upsets me, because we could talk about Clementine and Violet for, you know, another few hours. But I want to look a little bit into your time with Insomniac. Now, as we've said, you know, we can't really go too much into the development of Miles itself. But what I want to talk about mainly is, you know, a little bit more about landing the job and the part you played within, you know, what your role was in the Miles game, and then moving straight on to, you know, what was the response like when the game came out?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so as I said, Telltale closed in 2019. Is that right? Or is it 2018?
Yes, it was late 2019.
I can't years anymore.
Especially after the last 12 months. I don't think anyone can focus on time anymore.
I'm just like, I don't know, at some point in the past. It could have been when the pyramids were built. I have no idea. But Telltale closed, and about 5 months later is when I started at Insomniac. So in the meantime, I had some contracts, lots of stuff under NDA, because that's game writer life.
Yeah.
But I then, as I said, I actually I finished. So Spider-Man has I didn't work on Spider-Man, but Spider-Man has a very special place in my heart because Spider-Man got me through the Telltale closure, like in a lot of ways, because I started it before Telltale closed because everybody at Telltale was playing it and couldn't shut up about it. And I was like, fine, I'll play the Spider-Man game. So I picked it up, immediately loved it, loved the charm, loved the humor, loved the swinging. It was so great. And then Telltale closed, and I was not in a great headspace. And getting to play as Peter and how charming he was and how beautiful New York was, and it really just got me through a lot of that. Oh no, my life has been upended for a few. So it really has a special place in my heart. It also made me cry at the end. So awesome. But right after I finished it was when I had my first interview with John Paquette, who was the lead writer of Spider-Man. So I finished it, and 2 days later I was talking to him, and I was like, hey, I'm not to fangirl, but oh my God, it was so good. So it was really, really great. But so did the whole interview process. Was hired, joined Insomniac. I didn't know what project I was being hired for until the day I started. It's actually funny because when I was in the interview, Brian Intar, who's the creative director, asked me, "Hey, so we've all read your Twitter. We know you played Spider-Man." And I was like, awesome. But so he said, if you were going to pitch the next game, what would you pitch? Like, what would you pitch to come after that? And I said, I would pitch a Miles game because I love Miles. He's my favorite character. And Brian had to poker face because that's what they were interviewing me for. And I, of course, had no idea. It wasn't announced at that point. But on my first day, they told me, "Hey, you're on our Miles game," and I was like, so I did it. Because he was my favorite character in the first game. I loved his writing. I loved his kind of little mini story. And I wanted to see more of him. So I started on Miles. At that point, the creative team, including Evan Narcisse and Ben Arfman and some of the others, had been working on it for a few months. So they had some of the main characters and such. I joined as a writer. So it was just kind of us writing it for most of production. And then near the end, John Paquette and Max Folkman also joined the team and did some writing on it as well. We also had Milo Smiley, who was our intern, who did just a lot of really charming stuff in Miles. So that was kind of the whole team writing Miles. It was awesome. I mean, I don't know a better way to say it, but it was... to have had this game be so special to me and help me get through this hard time, and then to be able to write on Miles was really important and really, it was really great. It was honestly an honor. And Miles is a great character, and I loved working with all the actors. They were, they just brought. It was the first time in my career, because the way that we made games at Telltale was voice acting, was booth voice acting. And Insomniac does that as well, but also does performance capture. And so it was the first time that I got to see and direct actors acting out scenes I had written. And it was just watching them take what I had written and make it, a million times better with their beautiful acting was really cool. So that was what Miles was like. It was really great. And then obviously it came out last fall a lot with the PS5. First off, the first reaction that really hit me, and probably the team too, was the state of play when we announced Miles.
Oh, Twitter exploded for one thing. It exploded, yeah.
It did. And we knew people would be excited, but I just don't know if there's a way to predict that.
Yeah.
Wow. And it really hit me whoa, this is this is a big game. Like, a lot of people are going to play this video game. So that was huge. I never been priced like that before. And then obviously like Miles came out, and same thing, like the reviews start rolling in. People seem to really like it. They really like the characters, which that's what I'm always on the lookout for, is like, hey, do they like my characters who I love? Yeah, and it was really good. I was on a great team of really passionate creatives trying to pull this thing together for the PS5, and it worked. we did it.
It worked well enough to get you a BAFTA as well, didn't it?
It sure did. Yeah. So there were two big honors that came while working on Miles. The first one was becoming Forbes 30 under 30, was because I was part of the Miles team. That was partly for my work on Walking Dead, but also for Miles. And then, becoming a BAFTA breakthrough was for my work on Miles, and specifically, what was called out in my application and ultimately why I was selected. It was the designer of the game, James Cooper, for about the first half of production. He was the one who nominated me for the BAFTA. And it was because I had pitched Haley, who is a deaf character, and she uses ASL. And then that really, I had pitched her character. I wrote all of her scenes, but also, we had worked with deaf actors and consultants, to get everything right, to make it all accurate, to record the performance capture. We had to, like, the way that we captured the finger movements was new. Sony hadn't done that before. So all of that is what actually led to the BAFTA. And getting to write Haley and then the day on set with all the actors was like one of the highlights of my career. It was wonderful. It was such a good experience. It was really great.
Oh, I can imagine. As soon as I have to confess, I haven't played it because I don't own a PS4 or 5. That's the only reason, and it really annoys me because I've heard such good things. And I was one of those kids who grew up with Spider-Man 2 on the PS2, played it to death. Yep. The web swinging, the Pizzagate, everything. I loved it so much. The only reason was I think we got to the point where they announced the next consoles, and I thought there's no point in buying a PS4 now because I'm going to be moving on to the next console. I thought, and because it was already on Xbox, I was like, I'll get the Series X, and then as soon as I can, I get the PS5. And even if I can afford it right now, it's like gold dust to get hold of one. But I've
still got all the notifications on just because I'm curious, like when stuff comes back. Yeah.
I'm aiming to get one as soon as I can, and then I'll, I know some of the games now that are PlayStation exclusive, like Detroit and Horizon stuff, have gone on PC, but I'll just wait, get a PlayStation, and then get all the PS exclusive games and play through them. And Spider-Man is the one I'm like, both of those, I'm so excited to get into them because I've heard such amazing things. And I think what was so good about Miles Morales' reveal was, Into the Spider-Verse only come out, was it a year before the announcement? It wasn't long before.
It was, it came out around, it was definitely before, like, it came out before I started Insomniac, because I had seen it and loved it and thought it was...
it's a great film. It's a fantastic film. I think that's probably what popularized Miles a lot more for, like, general audience members, because it did it so brilliantly. That film is just, like, pitch perfect. It's fantastic. So, obviously, then you see him in the Spider-Man game, because I've seen, like, little clips on YouTube and stuff, and I think a couple of spoilers, which annoys me, but you can't go on the internet for more than, like, 2 minutes and not get certain things spoiled.
That's been one of the interesting things too about being on the internet with Miles versus Walking Dead was, like, with the Walking Dead people, I was pretty confident that, like, I could start posting things about my episode like a week later, because most of the people who were, like, the diehard fans who wanted to talk to me had already played it by then, because it's shorter, first of all. It's shorter and it's on multiple consoles. But with Miles, I've had to be much more careful about, like, talking with the community because I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't been able to get a PS5. I'm like, hey guys, don't you love that character that you love?
Scene at 1 hour 36 minutes into the game. That was a good scene, wasn't it?
Did you really like that part with webs? Like,
it's not many of those. No, that's easy to figure out. Oh no, but I'm hoping to dive into both of those because I've heard such good things and I really, really want to experience them. So as soon as I do, I will let you know.
So as you know now, that ending might make you cry.
Oh yeah, I mean that doesn't surprise me at all. I think I know one of the things that happens in the first game, and I know that probably will still make me cry despite knowing it. But like, yeah. So we'll see. We'll see how I fare with them. We'll see how
I'm rooting for you.
Oh god, that's probably a bad idea. It's probably not worth rooting for me. I think I'm already a lost cause.
Oh no, yeah, no, it's
oh god.
Both of them.
But yeah, so
like I can't talk enough about the team and how great they are. Because I mean, like I do feel like sometimes writers get a lot of credit for things we didn't necessarily do. So like, you know, obviously writers work hard and we write scripts and all that good stuff. But like to see a scene go from the page to performance capture to being animated to having the music laid in, like you just see how many brilliant creative people are making this as good as it is.
Yeah.
And that's what I just can't like praise the team enough on Miles, because watching it be built up to what it is, which is really beautiful and has really good emotional beats, is just like, it's because a lot of people work together on it. Yeah. And I'm really proud of the work I did on it, but also everybody else's work is just phenomenal. And, you know, now we're in that period where we're getting nominated for awards. We're starting to win awards. And it's just like, you know, it's the whole team. It still has like our Slack channel where we're like, oh my God, we did it, guys. And, you know, it's really, it's great. So,
putting all the work in and it all pays off in the end, eh?
Yes. And every time if someone tweets at me something really cute about Miles or sends me fan art, of course I immediately drop it in there. Like, look at this, guys. People love it. It's just really cool.
Oh, that's lovely. I love it. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So one of the next things I want to talk to you about is, because I've said this to you when I pitched the episode to you, is one thing I always love to do is I like to explore other work that people are doing beyond the things that they're most known for, because there's obviously a lot more to a person than a certain thing you might know about them. And, you know, I want to explore some of the other work you've done, in particular, you know, some of the other things you managed between Telltale and Insomniac in a minute. But one thing that was standing out to me was that you're writing a book. So,
writing a book.
Yes. So would you like to tell us a little bit about what's going on with that?
Absolutely. So my book is called Gamer Girls, 25 Women Who Built the Video Game Industry. So I've been working on this project we are coming up on 2 years right now. And the book comes out next year. So yes. So it's coming along. We are in edits and research and living it up. So the book is, as the title implies, it is about women who were doing so much of the work that created video games as we know them, and who sometimes got the credit and who sometimes did not get the credit. And it's, you know, kind of redressing that and talking about, here are 25 women who made this thing you love, and the industry would not look the way it does if they were not part of it. So, you know, it's women like Roberta Williams. It's women like Brenda Laurel, Muriel Tramis, like some of these really influential designers who, Amy Hennig is in it as well, who made games and series like Centipede and Uncharted and Gourd Kingdom Hearts, and, you know, just a really interesting breadth of both video game history, as well as, you know, it's just reminding people that like this industry is more, no one project is made by one person and not necessarily just the person that you've heard of. And this all kind of came about in part because my literary agent, Eric, a lot of it was his idea. He's like, hey, so I have this idea for this book. And I said, I'm sure that book already exists. And he said, no, it doesn't. And it should, obviously.
Yeah, it should.
So that's how the book got started. For me, and I say this in the book, so there's a whole thing about it. So you can read it later. But I was speaking at a boot camp for high schoolers, for high school girls who want to make video games someday. And I did a whole spiel about games, how great they are, what it's like to make them, and then opened it up to Q&A. And when the Q&A started, all they wanted to talk about was Gamergate. And I was like, okay, like, fine, we can talk about Gamergate. It's not a fun topic. We will talk about it. I will answer your questions honestly. But what I realized a few questions into talking about Gamergate was the reason that they were asking them was not just like for the lurid gossip. It was the tone of the questions was, why are you still in games? If it can get this bad, why would you want to do this? And the follow-up, if it's going to get this bad and I'm going to get harassed, why should I want to? So for me, the book is, I want to show, I like that reporting and those stories and knowing what happened with Gamergate and what still happens with harassment in our industry is still very important. But I also want to show the other side of development, that there are people who do and have for years made video games who love it, who love this industry, who have had a lot of really good successes, who have made their friends here, who have built their lives here. That there were women I think the earliest game developer I have in the book was in the 60s. And then it's, the 80s, 90s. Like, there are all these women making games and who are really proud of their work in games. And I don't feel like that gets enough headlines. We get a lot of headlines on how there is still very bad disparity. And that's true. But there's another side to it too. There are also women who are here and who have always been here. And it's about praising those women as much as it's about saying to young women now, like, if they can do it, so can you. They can do it. It's not perfect. You can do it, and you can continue to make this industry better. Like, we can get better, and it's you. You're going to be what makes this industry better. So that's the whole that's the whole emotional pull of the book. It's been awesome to write. It's me getting to do a ton of research on something I'm already interested in. So awesome. Yeah. And then, reaching out to a lot of women who I've looked up to for years and years, and getting to talk to them about their experiences. It's been a great, incredible experience. It's cool. That's the book.
So you got a date coming out next year? Or is it just next year currently?
It's next year currently. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. 2021 or 2022.
2022. Yeah. I told you, no one's got a grasp of time anymore.
COVID brain hits you hard. But yeah, 2022 is when it will be coming out.
Cool. All right, it sounds good. So moving on from the book to other work in general, I mean, you just mentioned teaching, which is something I didn't even know you were doing at all, so there's that too. But yeah, so what else have you either in the past been getting up to, or have you been getting up to now, aside from writing for Telltale and or Miles?
Sure. I mean, one of the problems with being a writer is that I can't talk about things until several years out, usually. So there's some work that I can't talk about yet.
Whoa.
But apart from that, so I've also been writing comics. Last year, I published, I was writing for IDW, so I wrote some My Little Pony comics. I wrote short stories for Read Only Memories, which is based on the video game. They did a comic series based on the world of the video game. So I got to write on that. Currently writing for IDW again. More on that later, probably, if you follow me on Twitter. So getting to do a lot of comics has been the big one. And then teaching, I've done some panels and interviews here and there, but I'm going to start teaching courses on narrative design shortly at the college level. So yeah, it's a rather full plate, but a very exciting one.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. That's really cool. So you get to pass on some of the things you've been learning as well, which I think is quite cool, Yeah. It's all there's a selfish side to it too, because I always go to GDC and I'm so inspired by everybody there, and it's kind of like it pulls you out of the day-to-day of your work, and it's like this shot in the arm of like, oh wow, this is so cool, what we do is cool, here are all these brilliant people. Like, it just really reinvigorates and reboots you in a way, and that's how teaching is for me too, like getting to work with students who aren't as, they're not in the daily kind of grind of game production. Not that it's bad. I love making games, but just the way that they're approaching it is different, and their influences are different. And it's just really fun to watch them be creative and get to push them a little bit. So yeah, it's a good experience. I really like teaching too. That'll be good. Oh, that's awesome. That is really cool. That's really cool. And then seeing what else you got for the comics would be cool as well. I mean, My Little Pony, maybe not quite my thing, but, you know, I mean...
Don't knock until you try. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me see if I can find a comic handy and I'll have a look.
My Little Pony was really fun because I haven't written for that demographic yet. It was my first time writing for young girls, young kids, really. And it was, you know, it's different in some ways because you can be a little more on the nose with what you're talking about, in that, like, kids, you know, so the first comic I wrote for My Little Pony, you know, the theme of it is like fear. What do we do with fear? How do we overcome fear? Okay. And I could be very upfront about that. Is like, this is what fear does. This is what it feels like. And this is how we get through it. Whereas with adult shows and games, you have to kind of softball your way into that a little bit more. You know,
so it doesn't feel like a lecture.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't want it to feel like a lesson of the week when you're writing for adults, but you kind of can when you're writing for kids. And it was just really fun. It's really colorful. It's just nice to see it together. So.
Oh, that's cool. So the closing question that I've got for you then, and I worry this is going to be a very short one for obvious reasons, as you said before, but one thing I like to do to wrap up these interviews is talk a bit about, you know, what's coming next for you. So what else you've been working on. And I feel like, obviously, the book is the big thing, and we've touched on that as well. I worry that everything else is probably going to be under embargo. Am I correct in thinking that?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I thought it would be.
Pretty much everything is something I can't talk about for everyone. Yeah, so I can say a little more generally, though. So obviously I still work in games. Games are cool. I have the book coming up next. I've started to dip my toes into some TV writing. So again, everything's under embargo, but that's potentially very exciting. And that's pretty much it. Everything else is a secret. but what is up next? I'm going to be writing more stuff and teaching some stuff.
Good summation. Good summation. So if people would like to keep in touch with you and find out what's going on, what are the best socials to keep in contact with you?
Definitely the biggest one is Twitter. I'm on the Twitter all the time. I would actually probably just stick to that one because the others fall off when I get busy, which is always. But it's pretty easy to contact me on there. So I would head over to Twitter. It's Mary K News is my handle. It's my handle because that was my handle when I was a journalist, and I can't change it or I lose my verification. So if you're wondering why,
of course, I did wonder about that. I was thinking about that. Of course, that makes more sense. It could have been egotistical. It could have been like, here's all the news on what Mary Kenney's up to now.
I feel like that. I'm like, it's not. Listen, I know I'm not like famous. I'm not a famous person. That's not what it means. It's that I used to be actually doling out headlines and news, like in the real world. Yeah, that's what it means. It is not, I don't think I'm Neil Gaiman or anything. Like it's just that I used to be a journalist. I don't want to lose my blue check mark. That's all it is.
I can't blame you. It's pretty much like a holy grail at this point, getting verified on Twitter. I feel like it's
it's much harder now, for sure. And it's definitely helped. Like, I've just met so many people through Twitter that I feel like I wouldn't have if I didn't have that following. So
that's fair. That's fair. Well, I mean, even for me, like it was. That's what's something about this interview in particular that was so cool was that to actually get to chat to you after having known you. Well, knowing you is pushing it, but been aware of you for so many years. It's like because when I was writing down who I was looking for the second series, I was like, I wanted to try and be a bit more experimental because a lot of the first season was. I mean, there's still a few of them in this season, but because I'm more well known for the Payday games, there was a lot of Payday focus, and I was trying to do a few that were non-Payday, which don't get as much attention or whatever, but it doesn't really bother me. I do this more for the enjoyment than anything else. But I was like, I want to try and think a bit wider now. Who else do I want to talk to? And one of them, like on my top of my head, was like, it'd be really cool to sit down, Mary, and find out what was going on with Telltale, because that was all so fascinating with The Walking Dead and everything, and then moving on. Like I said, I mean, we obviously couldn't talk much about Miles anyway, but even if we could have done, like, I wouldn't have played it, so it worked out quite well.
Right, it's like, Miles was great.
Miles was great. Moving on, so everything else I've done.
Here's all the Yeah, I mean that's the other big one, right? Is like, what am I allowed to talk about at this point? It's actually funny. So, if you can see when I'm spinning back and forth, that's one of the contracts I had was on Dying Light 2. I was one of the writers on it.
Okay.
In between Telltale and Insomniac, but so far, I don't really know what's happening with it. I mean, that's just what games writing is like, right?
It's
like,
an elusive game. It's a very elusive one.
I have no idea, but yeah, there are zombies in it. That's all I got.
That is an exclusive scoop, exclusive to this podcast. There are zombies in Dying Light.
yeah, you got the hot scoop. You heard it here, folks. Great.
Oh,
Mary Kenney news indeed.
There you go. She's actually reported the news. She's lived up to the Twitter handle. There you go. There you go.
Awesome.
Oh god, well, there you go. But that rounds off all the questions that I had for you, Mary. So all that's left to say from me is thank you very much. It has been an absolute blast to record this with you. I'm really glad we got to sit down and do this. It's been brilliant.
Thank you. It was fun to talk about all this stuff. I mean, not so much the sad stuff, but it was also very fun to talk about, and it was really great. I really appreciate being on. So thank you so much for all of this, for everything you do for the show. It's great.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.